Homeless individuals confront daunting and life threatening conditions when faced with heat waves and extreme weather events. These circumstances compound the already formidable challenges they endure in their daily lives. Among their hardships and vulnerabilities are heat related illnesses like heat exhaustion and heat stroke, resulting from prolonged exposure to extreme heat without access to shelter or cooling resources. Limited access to clean drinking water can lead to dehydration among this population. The absence of adequate shelter, coupled with the risk of foodborne illnesses and malnutrition, can prove life threatening, especially for those with underlying health conditions. Extreme weather conditions exacerbate stress, anxiety, and other mental health related issues, while the lack of personal hygiene facilities contributes to health problems and social isolation, making it even more challenging for them to seek assistance or locate resources. So, how? Houston moved 25,000 people from the streets into homes of their own. Although the nation's fourth largest city hasn't completely eradicated homelessness, its impressive progress offers a promising path forward. I had the opportunity to speak with Mike Nichols, the president of the Coalition for the Homeless, who tirelessly dedicates his efforts to assist the homeless population. To talk about this important topic of homelessness, we have got Mike Nichols with us. He has a very interesting introduction. He's a CEO and a president of Coalition for the Homeless, not only for Houston, for Harris County, for Fort Bend County, and Montgomery County. Thank you so much, Mike, for joining me today in my show. And it's been an interesting discussion even before the recording. Coming to the first question, with the heat wave in place and the extreme temperatures, how you guys have been dealing with the homelessness issue?
It is a time whenever we have this kind of intense weather.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if it's 105 the way it is now, or if it's freezing like it was in February. Either time, Houstonians have a sense of could it be like to live outside on the street, to live without shelter. And their hearts go out to these folks that they see living unsheltered. And it does to me too. We live in a country with the resources that really homelessness is a solvable problem. It is really solvable. And what we've done in Houston as a community is we've moved closer to solving this problem than most other communities in the United States.
How is that? Because if you look at it, I do agree in a way, because if you look at San Francisco and even in Texas, Austin is dealing with a lot of pressure at the moment. There is a lot of homelessness, inflation is high. It's tough for people after COVID to deal with all the pressures of life.
So in Houston, going back to 2011, a decision was made by our community, led by Mayor Anise Parker, led by some great philanthropists, some business leaders, some nonprofit service providers, that we would do things differently. We would do it as a system approach. Most other cities were not doing this. In fact, Houston at that time was noted by the federal government as having a significant homelessness problem.
Okay.
And in 2011, again, after the 2008 recession, we had a serious problem. But the community came together, and we said, how can we solve this as a community? And they made some decisions. One decision they made is they said, we're going to work together in collaboration. The second is they were going to choose a lead agency. And then we set up what's called a continuum of care steering committee of these business leaders and government funders, city, counties, and they chose a lead agency, and that was the organization, the Coalition for the Homeless. The third thing they did was say, we're going to try to bring in money together from the federal government in a planned approach, instead of having all these dollars coming to different organizations. The next thing they did is they said, we're going to do something different about as people come are homeless and they want services, we're going to have coordinated access. It used to, before 2011, if someone was experiencing homelessness, they would go to the Beacon, they'd go to Search, they'd go to a different agency, and they would be handled by that agency. What this group did is they said, we're going to do it differently. We're going to have everybody who is experiencing homelessness to do a coordinated assessment. And then we're going to rank those people based on vulnerability. Vulnerability means who's the most likely to die on the street?
Okay.
The most serious cases. And there was a big argument. Why don't we take the people who are the most likely to succeed? And the answer was, let us get housing for the people who are most vulnerable, because they're the ones who are going to spend the most government dollars at the hospital. They're the ones who are going to have the biggest problems. They're the ones most likely to die. Let's do it in the humane way. Those decisions were big decisions to make. And the nonprofits got together and said, well, I've been doing 20 things. I'm going to go down to doing 3.
Okay.
And you're going to do 3 different things. And it was a system approach. And now it's 12 years later, 28,000 people who are experiencing homelessness have been placed in permanent housing.
Okay.
Of those, Sophia, and this is amazing, even though the most vulnerable people were chosen first, more than 85% of those individuals stayed out of the homeless response system for more than 2 years and succeeded in overcoming the trauma of having lived on the street.
So you guys must be collecting all the data along with it as
As
well,
required by HUD, we have a very robust system called the Homelessness Information Management System, HMIS. And that system, every time an individual comes in and goes to any provider for homelessness, that's noted, their success is noted, their failures, where they're going, when they were offered housing, what their vulnerability score is, to add some real fairness and equity to this system.
So did you see any increase with the recent heat wave and the heat red sitting on the state of Texas and in Houston? Did you see any increase in the number?
No, again, once a year in February, we do a count called the point-in-time count. And it's not saying this is all the people who are homeless. This is on that 3 days, how many people we could find, and we do a good job, who are homeless. It's in the 3,000 range, and that includes people living in temporary shelters, in transitional housing, and those living completely unsheltered. And of that group, and this is the big news for us this year, we had a 17% decrease in those who are living unsheltered. The sheltered housing remained just about the same.
If I may ask, how accurate are these readings?
We think they're very accurate, but they are just one day. So we go to, we have 400 volunteers and trained personnel. We have an epidemiologist who works for us, who looks at the numbers, how it's done, and we do it the same way every year. The federal government looks and sees how we do it. It is accurate. Now, Houstonians sometimes say, well, I think I see more than 3,000 people out there. I don't know, because it's our perception. But in Houston, we have people who are homeless, living unsheltered. Again, about 1,500. But we have a huge number of people living in dire poverty.
Yeah.
And they may be out on the street. They may be sheltered, but they may be out on the street asking for money. They may have mental health issues, and you think, or they may just be poor. And so we have a hard distinction on that. But yes, we have too much poverty in this city. The focus of this is those people who are either living in temporary shelters or those individuals who are living on the street.
That was my next question, because before the interview recording, we were talking about you're more pro housing than pro shelter. So what is the difference?
So the philosophy that was made in 2012 is we're going to spend the government funding on housing. Why? Because one is it's less expensive than sheltering. The cost of sheltering individuals is very high. Second, because it's a permanent solution. When you have somebody in shelter, they're still waiting for housing. Sophia, you may be interested and have read about the city of Houston helped by funding, and we worked with them with private funders to build what's called a navigation center in the 5th Ward. We took an old school and we turned it into a navigation center. And that is a place that has about 80 beds for individuals who are in the housing process before they get all the paperwork done to come and stay. It is not a shelter. But if we quit housing those people, it becomes a shelter.
Okay.
So the Navigation Center is successful based on how many people we house and how fast we house those people.
Okay.
And the third is, are we a good neighbor? Because one of the things that I would say is that there's a lot of fear around people experiencing homelessness.
Yes.
And the facts
it's a psychological effect.
The facts are that someone experiencing homelessness is much more likely to have a crime committed against them than to commit a crime. Those are the facts. Now, of these 1,500 people, are some of them have serious mental health problems? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we work closely with the Harris Center, which is Harris County's mental health authority, on that. Again, a few hundred of those people. Do some of these folks have drug and substance issues?
Definitely.
Absolutely. But the way they move into homelessness is purely economic. And that happens, and that's just what happens is when people have economic losses, when poverty gets with them, when they lose their place to live, they become homeless. Thereafter, do all the other things happen to them? I would say if I lived on the street for a year, I'd have a serious mental health problem myself.
Yes.
So yes, they do. But again, what we've seen is housing is the solution.
Let me just take a very short break, Mike, over here, because after the break, we will be talking about how COVID has impacted the community. Just stay tuned.
The Made to Move sales event at Big Star Cadillac is all about the savings. Enjoy 1.9% APR financing on all 2023 and 2024 Cadillac CT4 and CT5 sedans, and all 2023 and 2024 XT4, XT5, and XT6 crossovers. Lower your payment with 1.9% APR limited term financing at Houston's Cadillac to your door dealer, Gulf Freeway, just 2 minutes south of the Beltway.
Shop smarter when you shop at Big Star. Shop BigStarCadillac.com.
Hey. Okay.
If you love me enough to tolerate my perfect little pets and all their glorious dander, then of course you'll visit nhtsa.gov/the right seat to make sure I'm in the right car seat. Hey, Bobo. Do trees tell each other stories?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, why don't we go find out? Listen.
Do clouds take naps?
I couldn't tell you.
Dad, do stars visit their friends?
Look.
Welcome back. We are talking to Mike Nichols with us, and we were talking about the situation of homelessness. And now we're going to thank you so much again, Mike, for...
My honor to be here, Sofia.
Thank you so much. Before the break, I wanted to talk to you about how COVID has impacted the community and the homelessness factor.
Yeah. COVID is something that all of us are still trying to figure out how it impacted the community and each of us.
I agree.
But our particular situation, sadly, but truly, it was positively impacted by COVID. And the story is a good story. On March 13th, which I know that date because that's my granddaughter was born on that date of 2020, I got a call from one of the hospitals saying a person experiencing homelessness had COVID and was leaving the hospital. What was I going to do? And I said, it's odd. I think it's a health problem. But I called Harris Health, and they said, I'm sorry, we are overwhelmed. Y'all figure it out. So through the magic of Zoom, I got together with the city and the county and began to talk through these problems. We set up a testing site. We set up a motel where people with COVID could go and stay temporarily, and we set up a shelter. And after a month of doing this, I said, this is ridiculously expensive. We could house people for much less than what we're doing all these services and motels and shelters for. And we sat down and they said, figure it out. The city and the county found $59 million of federal money, not local money, federal money. And we raised $6 million from the community. And we began the COVID housing program, which we call CHIP. And that program had a huge impact on our community where more than 10,000 people were housed. It was an incredible success. So what it gave us the opportunity to do was using these COVID dollars to house people.
Okay.
So when the COVID monies came in from the federal government, we knew how to do this. And that 2 years really gave us a big catch up because the homeless account had increased following Harvey. So COVID was terrible, obviously. It gave us an opportunity to do something important in Houston. Now, Sophia, here's the problem. December 31st of 2024, all these COVID federal dollars are going away.
Yeah.
And the anxiety is we do most of our work with federal dollars.
Okay.
Very little local dollars come directly to us, governmental dollars.
Yeah.
And thus, we have to figure out how we're going to maintain this momentum. We have funding available, established to keep more than 9,000 people who are currently in permanent housing housed. But how do we keep the momentum and allow Houston to be the first city to end chronic homelessness? How do we continue the momentum so we don't go backwards and end up like other cities? And it's going to take some creativity. Yesterday, I sat down with county and city leaders to begin that process of thinking through how are we going to fund this going forward.
Actually, that was my next question, because this is so difficult to keep people away from homelessness because it's an ongoing process. It never stops. It's always there. So, I mean, how do you guys cope up with that pressure?
Well, one is the success we've had just simply with that we have an 85% success rate when we move people into housing. Now, the folks coming into homelessness, it is a real issue. We're trying to look at the factors that drive people there. We have a great youth program for foster kids coming out of foster care, so they don't end up in homelessness. We have a new program with using funding that we got from the Bezos Day One funding to work on families and try some different experiments to keep people from falling into homelessness.
So there is basically a research done on whatever
Absolutely.
happened.
We keep very good records and we really look very closely at the best ways to do that.
Because you have a vast area. You have the city of Houston, you have Harris County, you have Montgomery County, you have Fort Bend County.
That's right.
I mean, that's
It's a lot of area and a lot of people.
Yes.
But my challenge to governments, my challenge to your audience is to demand that government funds these programs. And here's why. It's less expensive to house people than it is to keep them on the street. Our statistics show that it costs between $35,000 and $80,000 a year for an individual to live on the street mainly because they're showing up in emergency rooms week in and week out.
That's a great point, because you were telling me about this as well. Like, how much does this cost to shelter somebody? Or if they are homeless, that costs $35,000. But if you put them in, and if you provide them home.
Permanent housing cost us $18,000 per year per individual. And that includes a real home with a key and a lease and refrigerator and heating and air conditioner. It includes funding for that lease. And it includes funding for case management, professional case management, to help people grow their income, to help people overcome their mental health issues, to help them overcome their substance issues.
And then there's legal help available for them.
Absolutely. And the success rate is there, but first you have to get these people in housing. After that, everything starts to go well for them.
My next question would be like moving towards feeding people every day. That includes most of the counties like Fort Bend, Harris, Montgomery, and city of Houston. How does that work out?
And you're thinking of feeding people who are living on the street.
Yes, on the street.
So it's the question that my grandson asked me. He says, when you pass somebody who has his hand out, what do you do?
Yes.
And it's, what I do is I generally give people $1. Now, what I really want to do is find out if they're homeless, if they're experiencing homelessness, or if they have a home, but they're just desperately poor. And we have to, but in general, what we ask people to do is, yes, you have to lead with your heart.
Okay.
Smart to do. But we like people to come into the system. So a group came to us recently who said their churches and synagogues and mosques wanted to do a feeding program.
Okay.
And where should they go? Should they go out to the encampments? And I said, there are a lot of folks who go to the encampments and it's not well organized. Why don't you do a program that's well organized for people who just overcome homelessness, who are living in apartments? And they set up a pantry program for those folks, and it's been very, very successful. So what I ask people to do is do this as part of the system. It's easy to go out and say, okay, on Thanksgiving, I'm going to bring a bunch of turkeys out.
Yeah, like Houston Food Bank does.
But the food bank is in the system. They do a great job, and they help our people who are recently housed, and they have programs, organized programs through the city for people who are unsheltered. I don't, if they're folks who want to go one off and feed people, that's their choice. But my response is, I like what the mayor did when he set up a feeding program that was going to be there day in, day out, is in a good location. And the main thing he did is make sure that we, in our homeless response system, were there to assess people for housing.
Okay. You're referring to the recent incident in city of Houston where they're in front of a library. The soup kitchen was trying to feed the homeless. And then because they did get a lot of attention for that.
They got a lot of attention. Again, that's not my job. It's Sophia, when people say, well, when you have an encampment, our job in an encampment is to help house these people. When we've housed these people, we call the city, TxDOT, other entities, and say, now you can come clean up this area. And if you need to, close it down. You can fence it off. That's their work of the closures. Ours is the decommissioning. It's the same thing. If individuals want to do this feeding, that's fine. I personally like a system approach because I've seen the success. I like a system approach because I believe
in a system.
Well, this is the other thing. I believe that private entities, philanthropy, can leverage government dollars.
Yes.
So we raise about $1.8 million for keeping our organization running. But we've raised, with the federal dollars that are brought in are in the $60, $70 million. And so the contributions leverage those funds.
Yes.
What I just talked about, the $59 million during COVID, the $6 million of private funds leverage that and allows us to solve problems for individuals.
More people for a longer time.
That's right. Correct. So that's my belief about philanthropy should leverage government funds. Private philanthropy can do this well, and it's the same thing with feeding. I just think the system approach is a great approach.
I just want you to comment on the situation of homelessness in Austin. Why aren't they, when City of Houston is doing a great job, our counties are doing a great job, why this module is not being replicated in the state of Texas and City of Austin?
Every city, every location has had a different idea. New York sent a lot of people in shelters.
Shelters, yes.
And
they have a huge outburst of shelters over there.
And in Spokane, they took a big location, made everybody go to this one location.
Okay.
San Antonio has what's called Haven for Hope, which was a very expensive project.
Okay.
But isn't the way we would do it.
Okay.
Austin is a very difficult situation. It's the housing's not affordable.
Yeah.
I mean, Houston is great because we believe in housing. We like apartments. We want people to build more apartments. We have a permitting system that allows it. Austin is way behind on that. So I would say two things. One is our governments work together, our county and city work together. And secondly, we are a pro-housing community. Austin for many years didn't want new housing. And now they're behind.
Okay, my next question and my last question would be like, because it's so expensive building up new homes, because there has been recently been faced a shortage of new homes. So how does this help in housing people in all these homes? Where are we going to find those housing?
Well, I'm going to keep saying we need more housing. And that's the other thing I'd like the audience to do is, what is the state of Texas doing to help with affordable housing? And I'd say not enough. Yes. We have a very wealthy state with a huge budget, and they are not doing what they need to do to help, particularly urban areas, with housing.
Because housing prices have increased. There are a lot of people who cannot even afford to buy a home anymore.
That's right.
State of Texas, Houston used to be cheaper for a lot of people.
So affordable housing
not anymore
is very important. Having good permitting practices lowers cost. We need to keep working on that. We need to keep thinking about how to get people to housing. It's in many ways, housing is what made America great.
Yeah.
And if you think about that moment, if you were not in a house, what would it feel like not to have your own apartment, not to have your own house? We can do better. We can do better. And my answer will continue to be, it is less expensive to put someone in housing than it is to leave them on the street. It is less traumatic for children to be supported and put in housing and giving that opportunity than to have them go to school after sleeping in a car. We can do better. The state of Texas can do better. I'm very impressed with Harris County and City of Houston because they've got a good focus on this. And they also understand other thing, Sophia. Folks who've experiencing homelessness are just like me and you.
Yes.
They're not any different. Yes, they stumbled, but yes, they need second chances. And anytime you put a stumbling block in front of somebody, it's a problem. And again, my answer is, these folks can get housed. We can solve homelessness in Houston. Can they do it in Austin? Can they do it in Los Angeles?
It has to be a will there.
It has to be a will. The political establishment needs to not step on each other. I like the idea of a nonprofit being in the middle between government and philanthropy. It works very well. But is Houston unique? I don't know. I want to say, no, it's not unique. But at the same time, we are a city that when Katrina came, we housed 220,000 people.
And we suffered
when
through
Harvey was a disaster. We made that work.
Yeah.
We are a community that knows how to solve problems. We're a community that supports one another. We're a community that knows
hard times.
We're a community that knows economics goes up and down
Yes.
for all of us individually and as a community. Homelessness is a great model for solving so many other
problems. Thank you so much, Mike. Thank you so much for joining me. I would be wrapping up my show with this. Like Mike said, homeless people are like you and me. We can help them. But before that, we should make sure to put them through a right system. That's how we can solve the problem for long term.
Addressing homelessness is a complex, ongoing effort that requires constant collaboration, especially when challenging the status quo. Even after witnessing post-pandemic evacuations from underpass encampments, questions persist. The homeless still face stigma and yearn for stable housing. Homelessness remains a daily crisis, provoking emotions like anger, fear, and helplessness among all populations. While Houston has made progress, there is no quick fix for homelessness.
Thank you for watching Truth Be Told with me, Sofia Jamal. Have a blessed day.